Rogan, aka DC Draino. Welcome to Free Range American once again. I'm drinking fucking water. You're drinking beer.
I'm drinking
stopped
Guinness.
drinking.
It's Irish water.
Yeah, it's Irish water. I stopped drinking a few months ago, so I'm like off the. Not because I had some problem. I was having these weird liver enzyme fluctuations. My doctor was like, "Oh, you have liver cancer." And so for about 3 weeks, I thought that I had liver cancer, give or take. And then he's like, "Oh no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's just some blood work issues." So I stopped drinking, and I've just like stopped. I was like, you know what?
That's a good reason.
All right. Yeah, I've spent a little bit of time around those Iraqi burn pits, so I'm always like super weird about random fucking cancers that have affected these guys.
Yep.
Yeah. So I get my blood work done like every 2 months because, I've got these fucking rad kids and I've got this great business and I'm like, man, I kind of want to be around for a while. So
I don't blame you. I've never done anything as noble as what you did and subjected myself to that type of stuff, but I am a pretty fair poster child for skin cancer, so I get checked. Any freckle that's out of place, I'm like, was that there? I need an appointment.
I was texting my wife pictures of these moles on my back. Like, she's like, dude, you need to chill the fuck out. I'm like, my kids are 3 and 6. They're awesome. And yeah, I've lived my life up to this point fairly send it, philosophy, just like who gives a fuck, let's do this.
Free range.
Free range. And I still do kind of, right? Where I'm like, I have these fucking wonderful kids that I'm absolutely infatuated with, like these great times and looking at what they're doing in the future. And I'm like, man. So anyway, enough about my crazy.
That's awesome though. You're literally living the American dream. You went out and fought to, keep us free. And now you're tapping into that freedom and setting an example for a lot of other guys. And I know from speaking with so many veterans that, the whole Black Rifle Coffee gang is such an inspiration of what you can do after the service and, how good these guys are. And so you guys have really changed a lot for the better.
You know what? I'll take that as a compliment. And I'll also add to that is I try to tell people that we're a template for success, because if a bunch of fucking knuckle draggers can make something like this happen, literally most people are smarter. So think of what they could do. Like, holy shit, if we can do it, so I just hope it gives people a little bit of hope where they're like, man, these guys are really kind of they're kind of meatheads. So shit, if they can do it, then I can do it, right?
But it's the expression is, A+ students end up working for C students. Not that you guys are C students, but myself kind of embarking on my first entrepreneurial pursuit. I think the biggest differentiator between people like you and on a much smaller scale, people like me is the appetite for risk and uncertainty and being able to have the balls to go out into the unknown without a paycheck and have the confidence in yourself to address the issues as they come and adapt and, figure it out.
I love that about your story because, I'll see a post about it. I've only a couple. It's not like you're posting about it a lot, but you left your life in a less free state and kind of, so you got to tell us your story, man, because it's super cool. And I love hearing it. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So I'm a lawyer by trade. I went to college in Boston. I went to law school in Chicago, and I graduated right after the recession. So I was just looking for any job that would have me. And I had a lot of student loans, and the best job I got was in Los Angeles. So, at the time it wasn't as crazy. It was still, California, and it was 2011. And I ended up making my way into the entertainment sector. and I was working on movies, specifically film finance. I was a transactional lawyer, so I did deals.
Right.
And people that wanted to invest in movies, I helped them invest. And, I did some TV, some talent, some music, but I mostly focused on movies. And, after Trump won, California went to hell. I mean, they just lost their minds and became, if Trump said go right, they go left, up, down. Air is good, they're going to, suffocate themselves. I mean, just crazy talk. And, 13% tax and, hearing Joe Rogan talk about how he's leaving California, it's too crowded, and the taxes and the lockdowns. I'm like, I was on that wavelength a few years ago. I was like, this is not going in the right direction, and you're almost punished for working hard and making something of yourself.
Right.
And if you're a straight white male that's a citizen of the United States of America, you are treated like scum out there. Absolute scum. You are a second-class citizen. Illegal immigrants are absolutely treated better than citizens. So I was just like, what's the point? You know? And I visited Florida once for a wedding, buddy's wedding, Tampa, St. Pete area, and fell in love with it after one weekend. I told my buddy, I was like, yo, I think I'm moving here. And at the time I had like 80,000 followers on Instagram.
Right.
And which you cannot make a living off 80,000 followers.
No.
I don't care who you are.
No.
But if you can get 80,000 followers in a kind of short amount of time, there's that, what if I jumped full board in?
Right.
And at the time, it wasn't even about the career. It was about trying to help save America. President Trump got elected. The news hated him. Wall Street, academia, Silicon Valley. He had no support except people on social media. And I just really loved memes and started posting them and, decided to make that leap and just do this full time and do whatever I could to help save this country, domestically and through kind of educating people about how the Constitution is supposed to work, not what they're saying. Hate speech is not a thing.
Right.
It's not. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0. Hate speech is free speech.
Right.
So why are we still trying? So it's kind of just reinforcing constitutional norms so that what you guys did overseas is protected here at home.
Well, it's so interesting to me, man, because I have these conversations with people, and I really do try to pull myself out of my echo chamber. Right? I do. I want to be challenged. I want a spirited Socratic method in the sense of, hey, I really do appreciate the best idea, right? In practicality, not just in, pontificated fucking theory. I want to know what people think. And this free speech thing and where people are landing with cancel culture, which I think would probably be more accurately defined as cancer culture, because this thing is not free speech is free speech. And if you don't like what somebody says, that doesn't give you the right to fucking press no more, or you can turn around and not listen, or you can debate it, or you can do a wide variety of things, but we don't get to pick and choose. This isn't the buffet of rights, so to speak, right? I get to take all the dessert and I get to just kind of leave my vegetables. It's like, no, man, that's not the way America works. And you being a lawyer, I really want to hear your perspective on free speech in America and where is it? What's the temperature of this thing right now, man? Because it really seems like it's fucking under full-fledged attack to me.
100%. And right now, what I'm seeing is you've got the EU, right? And they're very highly censored, and you have a far more censored communist China.
Right.
And the companies, the big tech companies that we all use here are used over there.
Right.
And they adapt their services to address these censorship needs. What I see is those norms and those systems are bleeding into America. And the powers that be, in these systems also want America to be censored. There's commonality amongst global powers about what they want. They want free and unlimited immigration. They want very high taxes. They want censorship. They don't want anyone to have guns. We are the Alamo for freedom across the world. We always have been. It's ever more so now. And Trump, the reason why they hate him so much is because he's our leader. He's the leader of this. It's a revolution, and it is happening globally. But without us, it won't make it all the way through. So it's part of a bigger battle. I say to people all the time, if we had a truly fair social media where the only things that were censored are things that are not constitutionally protected, like death threats, false alarms of some type of emergency, you have a fire in a crowded theater, any type of super targeted harassment. Barring all of that, everything else should be free and clear. And they are stifling ideas that they know defeat theirs. Mm-hmm. And they call it hate speech. They call it sexist, xenophobic, all the words that don't even mean anything at this point. But now it's getting really dangerous because as we're seeing with all this COVID stuff, we're looking for a vaccine. We're looking for a cure. We're looking for, there's a drug out there. And I don't want to talk about it specifically so that this doesn't get flagged on any social media. But I was with a bunch of very, very well-respected doctors that went to Ivy League medical schools, UCLA, and they were all in Washington, D.C. last week. I was with them, myself and a few others, and they say mainstream media won't get our message out. Maybe you guys can help. And their testimony on the steps of the Supreme Court went viral, and they talked about a drug. Again, I won't talk about it specifically, that has been FDA approved for decades. Yeah. And prescribed. And they have all talked about how studies have shown it is effective in treating COVID. And all those videos were taken down within 8 hours. And one of them had 18 million views in 8 hours before they took it down. And in an uncertain environment, in terms of science and medicine, shouldn't we have open debate? Why are we censoring what credible, highly respected doctors are saying just because it disagrees with A, the mainstream media, or B, worse, global organizations like the WHO that are effectively controlled by China? And to make it worse, we have severed ties with them as a country. Yeah. President Trump said, we're not funding the WHO. They lied to us many times. We know they're working for China. They can't even say the word Taiwan. Yeah. They're in so deep. So why are our social media companies listening to an organization that the United States has effectively cut diplomatic relations with? It's crazy. It's a very disheartening time. I think a lot of it has to do with the election. Yeah. But it's pretty scary.
Yeah. There's so many different things that you talked about there, which, I like to try to put things into a strategic perspective for a lot of people. China's not our friend. Russia's not our friend. Like, these aren't friendly states to the United States. Just because we have diplomatic relationships with the country has no bearing on whether or not we're actively participating in intel collection, and then in a combination of ways, we could be in covert war. We were in a Cold War people forget about the Cold War with Russia. And how long were we actively engaged with the Russians? From 1945 until the fall of the Soviet Union, we were considered enemies with the Soviet Union. And people like to think that we don't have any of these challenges when it's so blatantly obvious to me, and obviously I think a combination of other people for you, because you pointed those things out. We have international Chinese or foreign-backed companies. We have domestic companies that could be owned by international corporations. They have a very specific agenda. They don't benefit from having open source information because a lot of this information goes directly contrary to their long-term plan, right? So, of course, they're going to try to press the mute button on us. I guess when I look at these things, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where do we begin, right? So, where do we begin to not only get more of the information out? Because a great example of that was when we were talking about you were talking about the testimony of the doctors. And one of the doctors, she was from Cameroon, right? The one that really went viral. And then the next piece of information that you heard about her after the videos were taken down was that she believed that witches spread, I forget, curses through through birth and a few of these other things. Like you started hearing this person is crazy, and I'm thinking, okay, so she's just got a standard kind of PR hit job done against her because
it was a character assassination.
You have to go after her character. You have to assassinate her publicly because anybody that saw it now, they're going to go, oh fuck, she didn't know what she was talking about. She's a crazy person.
Yeah. And you notice how in all the things they talk about, they don't dispel any of the actual medicine assertions she's making, which were corroborated by the other 20 plus doctors who all said the same thing, who are all citing the same studies. So her name is Dr. Stella Emanuel. I love her. She was arguing with someone. She goes, here, hold my coat. She takes off her white coat and gives it to me to hold while I'm filming her. She was yelling at some guy that was yelling Black Lives Matter and how these doctors, a bunch of coups. She's like, what? I'm black. Why are you, as a white guy, what are you telling me to do? And, in the whole movement, right? Oh, Black Lives Matter, Black voices matter. Great. We have a female Black doctor at the top of her field, Texas doctor, by the way.
Right.
Y'all are lucky, Houston, who immigrated from a third world country and is now a esteemed American doctor. And she has sincerely held religious beliefs.
Right.
You can pick and choose some of the things out of isolation, but in Christianity, we believe in the devil and we believe in God and heaven and hell and demons. Like we do believe, if you believe the Bible, that stuff is real. So, I'm not saying I agree with things she said. I have not combed through because I largely think it's irrelevant. What her religious beliefs are her religious beliefs. But what medicine, what studies she's citing, what other doctors are citing, that's what I want to focus on. Because character assassinations, that we all know that's a distraction. We have people suffering and dying from this disease that can possibly be treated with a medication, and to just block it and then attack her. Very strange to me. Very strange. So
my question is where do you think this is coming from? Right. So the direct muting and manipulation of information, and then why? Right. So I have my theories, but
I'm curious what your theory is, because I have a theory as well.
I think it's a combination of things. And obviously, like, I'm probably so far fucking wrong, but there's probably a fraction of this that's right. But they want Trump out so badly. And when I say they, you've got a combination of entities that really, really want this guy out. And when we really look at it, and hey, I apologize, RNC. I'm going to come after you just as hard as the DNC. But at the end of the day, you guys have strings. When I say you guys, RNC and the DNC, they've got strings attached to them. And those are corporate strings that, honestly, between PACs and super PACs, let's trace the money. I don't exactly know, but you don't get money for free. That's not the way this works. That's not the way the whole system works. That's the way the system has never worked, actually. So then you have the media outlets for the RNC and the DNC, and you've got portions of the RNC that want this fucking dude out so bad. They want Trump out so badly. You have the Lincoln Group or whatever now, all these former Bush administration guys, they're coming out against Trump. You've got the DNC that they would prefer just to have an incompetent, sociopathic boob in office than Trump, because their entire platform is just vote against him. That's like they're just saying vote against him. We're just going to put anybody that doesn't, ruffle the feathers. And so when I think about this, I'm thinking the people that have the most to lose about maintaining an administration are the people that lost power. So you have, the Clinton, Obama, the Democratic dynasties that are essentially hinged because they're manipulated by the same corporate interests. So they're losing power, and they're losing power day by day by day. The impeachment didn't work. They tried, it didn't work because that's what they were kind of going chips in on. So now they have to manifest a combination of other things. And I don't think it's just the DNC, RNC. I think it's the masters above, right? It's one level above. And I think you're right. I think that Trump came in with limited to zero friends. I think that he didn't take a lot of money. I don't think he took in a lot of corporate money. I think a lot of this was individual donors that were directly contributing to the campaign. I think he was more successful at that than guys like Bernie, which, the media loves to tout as the guy that, raises by $10 at a time or whatever the fuck, flowery prose they want to, throw out for that socialist idiot. And I think these guys want him out so badly that they're willing to impeach on false information. They're willing to manifest a completely false narrative between races because we have to divide in order to conquer. And they're going to continue to perpetuate a false narrative over a pandemic that shuts down the economy, because if you don't have a good economy and you have scandal in your presidency and you've got a combination of other things, that the chances of this person getting elected again go down so fucking bad. And the other thing that I look at is I look at polls, right? So he's down 12 points, we'll say, on an average across the board, right? But what was he down 10 points with Hillary, right? So
it might have been 15 at one point.
Right. So you've got polling data, and I'm like, man, even for a guy to have been in this position, to have taken this much shit for 3 years, this is, when I say this is the worst administration in modern American history when it comes to everything has been thrown at this fucking guy. Everything has been thrown at the administration. They had to go after Flynn because why? Flynn knows where all the bodies are buried, right? He knows where all the bodies are buried. They had to discredit him. They had to try to put him in jail. They had to come in and roll up everybody. So there's a reason, and trust me when I say this, like, I wish Trump would calm down on Twitter. Like, I really wish, and I know that's a common theme, but I really like what he's done. I love the actions. Go after China. I want to eviscerate that fucking country. I want it to economically eviscerate them. And then I want to go after all the other heads of state and their dynasties that have led America into being essentially manufacturing incompetent, because they are the ones that fucking led us down this shithole of having 90+% of our drugs manufactured overseas, and we have no manufacturing capability, and all these free trade agreements that have been fucking cut for these corporate entities, and this is their fucking mess. So anyway, now that I've said my piece, I
would have to agree with at least 95% of that. And I think most Trump supporters believe those exact things as well. Trump is, so it's big picture, the elites versus the regular people.
Yeah.
And the elites are mad that the regular people have put in a guy that tells them what to do.
Right.
And the elites, it's an alliance. It's across, you got your CNNs, your MSNBCs, you got all of academia. Harvard, a poll came out recently, showed Harvard, only 1% of professors identify as conservative at Harvard. 1%.
Yeah, of course.
Is that diversity? Yeah. Diversity.
Right.
And, obviously social media, a lot of foreign interests. I mean, if you think it's a coincidence that Trump renegotiates this China trade deal and then COVID happens
right
after the ink.
Right
the
after.
Ink wasn't even dry on the paper. And then COVID happens. And there was still another phase 2 coming down the pipe. Like, come on. And if you think we have cracking Guinness number 2 here.
Please.
If you think we have impeachment immediately followed by Iran, immediately followed by COVID,
right,
immediately followed by lockdowns, recession, race riots, all in 6 months.
Yeah.
We had like once a decade, cataclysmic events all in 6 months.
Right.
They are full, and right before the election.
Yeah, right before the election.
Mail-in voting.
Yeah.
Coming down. They are launching every possible weapon they have against this guy. And then you got creepy Joe Biden sniffing kids, touching women, sexually assaulting them. The moms of the victim call into Larry King to talk about how Joe Biden sexually assaulted her daughter. And they're like, well,
right.
And then the media's like, well, we don't believe those types of women.
Right.
Or, Black Lives Matter. And then, you got guys like David Dorn, retired police captain, killed stopping looters, dying in the street. Well, not those lives.
Right.
Black lives only matter when they're killed by white cops. Let's be real. So people like Trump actually truly care about saving Black lives. We had the lowest Black unemployment ever. And then we had 2 terms of a Black president where things in Chicago got worse. And you got people like Kanye saying, Obama was like opioids. He made you feel good, but in the end, he's just destroying you.
Right.
So, and now we got the craziest thing I've ever heard of in my life, defund the police.
Right.
And we're seeing instant results of why that's a horrible idea. It's horrible. Like, what do they think? Oh, less police. Now the criminals will just chill out. Like, no. So, and it's all the chaos, all the bloodshed. It's all in Democrat-controlled cities, places where Republicans haven't held power in 50 to 100 years. Chicago, Minneapolis. But I have a lot to be hopeful about. Not only do I think we're going to win in November, but I think it's going to be a landslide.
Wow.
And I don't talk about that a lot publicly, especially on my account, because there's no real incentive for people to go out and vote if they think it's in the bag. So that's kind of like a sneak preview for Free Range America. But I think it's going to be a landslide. And we saw it happen in the UK. They just had an election this year. A conservative was elected prime minister. And the Labour Party, their Bernie Sanders bros equivalent, got the worst losses in 100 years almost. Wow. It's like the 1930s. And if you remember, in 2016, leading up to the Trump election, they did Brexit. And they finally got Brexit through this, recently, a few months ago. So they kind of are a canary in the coal mine politically. Brexit, Trump. Historic losses for Bernie bros. You do the math.
Right.
So I'm optimistic about that. And on the free speech, we were talking about that. Trump signed this executive order, free speech on social media. It was a shot across the bow, but it wasn't a shot into the bow.
Right.
But within that executive order was the roadmap of how he expects to fix it, which is federal legislation and state legislation that will give people the right to sue these social media companies for censorship, bans, deplatforming, etc., which right now you pretty much can't do.
Yeah, which leads me to a question, which is I have mixed feelings on this, which is there's a part of me that says the American people paid for the highway, which is the internet. It was invented by the DoD. It was bought and paid for essentially by the United States taxpayer. At this point, I think a lot of these social media entities, they're almost public services, and they're in some ways you could consider them publicly subsidized by the United States taxpayer by a combination of narratives. And then I have the other side of me, which is, they're also public or privately held companies. So you can either choose to do their rules or not. So what's your take on it, man?
And that's why that exact perspective is why this has kind of boiled over to the point where now Twitter and Facebook are literally removing messages posted by the president of the United States.
Right.
I said probably 2 or 3 days ago in a tweet, big tech is now more powerful than the president of the United States when it comes to the dissemination of information.
Right.
And that's a very scary thing. He's obviously got the nuclear button. He's got the military. He's got a lot of power. But when it comes to communication on social media, big tech is more powerful. That's not how it should be. Now, I will say I absolutely respect the position of less government intervention, the better, right? You're a business owner. Last thing you want to deal with is more regulations, more taxes. But here's the thing. Government is already very heavily involved in a lot of businesses. You know this. You have a minimum salary to pay, benefits, payroll taxes, working conditions, overtime rules, harassment policies. You can go down the list.
Right.
So why wouldn't we put what I would analogize to like a heart stent? And it's so specific, but it opens the valve. It just keeps the valve open so that speech can flow freely. We're not going in there and saying you need to say this or that you need to favor X over Y. We're saying open the highway so that all cars can travel down it and have a fair and equal chance.
Right.
Not to mention that thing we're trying to protect is the First Amendment.
Right.
So in a world where we are seeing very clear bias, there's even the most hardcore leftists would agree that big tech is on their side, that there is a clear bias.
Right.
Why would we not, it's the equivalent of, restaurants in the 60s or whatever, throwing people out, which, surprise, surprise, was actually Democrat-controlled areas, and it was Southern Democrats.
Right.
And now the modern-day Democrat is throwing them off social media for things they don't like. They used to judge you on the color of your skin. Now they judge you on the color of your politics. So I think that we need a very base level of protection of our constitutional right to free speech on social media. If we do not have that, this country will fall, because social media is our last hope to spread a message. That is why they're censoring us. We have literally no other way of mass communication except AM radio. Right. And I guess, carrier pigeons. But but that's it. We don't have any other. There is not even pro sports. Oh, maybe we can tell some people good messages at NASCAR or Major League Baseball, those they're falling. They're getting overtaken by the social justice hysteria. So if we don't have social media, I would love to stick by principles of as least government as possible, but if we don't have the ability, it was JFK. He said, if peaceful revolution is impossible, violent revolution is inevitable.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, following this and obviously using platforms for, marketing and media, for a combination of resources that we do, we've always had to really be careful with Facebook and Instagram, because we're pretty hardcore pro-America, right? And
love it.
The problem is, and we've talked to our Facebook reps about this, we've talked to our Instagram reps about this, and they're one and the same, or whatever platform, is that if we get when we say pro-America, we lose our platform, right? And we have to communicate with our customer. right? It's one of those things where, you know, we have to communicate with our customers. So if I have a gun on, you know, our Instagram page, and that's one of the reasons why we do the content the way that we do it, because we try to provide more entertaining value with this, because then it's perceived as, you know, less aggressive or whatever. And we're like, well, you get the fact that it's Black Rifle Coffee, and you see us playing, you know, Steel for the 4th of July with, you know, suppressed, you know, subsonic suppressed fucking 9mm. You know where we stand on the 2A, right? Everybody should know where the fuck we stand. There should be zero questions. So we're trying to exemplify that information through video. And we've been pretty good. And we've met a few people that are on our side in Facebook. They're like, hey, don't worry, I got your back. If anything comes down, like, I'll give you a call. And they'll pull you aside and be like, hey, listen, I'm a pro-gun person too, so don't tell anybody. But listen when I say it. Don't tell anybody. But it's pretty insane to me when I really kind of take more of my emotion out of it and try to be as objective as I can, to the amount of information manipulation that goes on an hourly basis. If we looked at all the platforms and we looked at kind of how they're shifting the narrative, and how this, you know, you can be as pro-Antifa as you want, and the chances of you getting fucking banned are slim to zero, right? You can be The Economist. Like today, they posted some bullshit story about how anybody that wears a fucking Hawaiian shirt and that has a concealed carry permit now is some kind of white supremacist, because that's evidently the new narrative for the media to catch. I don't know if you've heard this one, but these media outlets are posting stuff about anybody that wears a Hawaiian shirt and that carries a gun now is basically a white supremacist. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, you guys have like completely fallen off the register, and your information war that you're going after now is like anybody and everybody that even we're next. When I say that, it's like the pro 2A community. If we think that we've been under attack, stand by, because we lose this election, and this is going to be a really rough ride for us for the next 4 years, right? And it's gloves are off. Gloves are off. All censorship is on. Let's fucking get it on, and let's completely mute the entire conservative voice. That's what I think will happen.
100%. The Hawaiian shirt gun, isn't that like the Matt Best special? Like, isn't that his like signature?
Not really. Well, it's funny because this started in the tactical world as just something that was funny. Like, yeah,
I've never even heard, like, I don't get where they're getting that from. I feel like, you know, I'm able to see kind of where the real crazies are on the right, because they hate me too for a lot of reasons I won't get into, but they don't like me. I literally have anti-white supremacy in my Instagram bio, just as a very clear delineation that I ain't a part of that crew,
right?
And they don't like me, so I don't really have to worry about appeasing them. But I just haven't seen, you know, in the internet wins Hawaiian shirt gun. I don't know where they're pulling this out of their ass.
They're pulling it out of their ass. Vox did a story on it a few weeks ago, and then a few other outlets picked it up, and they're talking about these guys are Boogaloo guys, and they're always talking about the revolution in the Boogaloo, the Electric Boogaloo. You remember that fucking movie? It was Breakdancing 2, the Electric Boogaloo. And I'm like, you guys are talking about. I have no idea. Actually, I have no idea how many guys are out there talking about the Boogaloo necessarily. But I'm like,
I mean,
these guys are just posting bullshit
that we just saw in Seattle, where they had an autonomous zone, and people were getting freaking killed.
Yeah,
or they wouldn't allow cops in. Does that count as a Boogaloo? Yeah, I'm pretty sure
it doesn't. I guess because it's Antifa, right? It doesn't.
What about burning cities down in, you know, poor black neighborhoods? Detroit, whatever, and then you got Hollywood celebrities bailing the people out that are burning them down. That sounds like a Boogaloo to me. You know, Snoop Dogg threatening the president of the United States, pulling a gun. Yeah. Boogaloo, like, hello, what? You can't have a one-sided Boogaloo hunt here. because there is another side that's actively doing what they are saying they're scared of people on the right doing. And it's like, guys, dozens of people, have died in these riots for social justice. And now with police being defunded, dozens more people are dying in the streets. I've seen so many sad videos of people getting shot in, New York and Chicago. And it's like, they are such liars, so evil, so destructive. And then they do all that, and then they point the finger at people like you running a business. Well, you have weapons training,
right?
And you probably own a Hawaiian shirt, and you make cool gun videos. So you're the real bad guy here. It's crazy talk. It's propaganda.
It's propaganda. I mean, they would really hate me. I mean, for the last several years, I've given guns away as bonuses. So I did a custom.
Yeah.
I did a custom Noveski rifle with it was all AR with a hand grinder and coffee and a coin, a bunch of other stuff. I gave those away as bonuses to employees. Before that, I was giving away custom Glocks that are engraved with like Glock 43s for custom carries. At any point in time, you got so many guns and so many dogs in this building that, this is one of the safest, companies,
Absolutely.
I think, in Salt Lake. But, meanwhile, you got companies like, these other coffee companies that are on the race to the bottom of the wokeness, right? They're all trying to out woke each other with their bullshit. You got companies that, one of the companies that we know of, a couple of them actually, during this, they fired one of their Ethiopian coffee importers. The guy is like so well known for the best Ethiopian coffees in quite possibly the industry. And he's an African from Ethiopia that immigrated to the United States. He built a very successful business, and he came out saying a lot of pro-American things on social media. Guess what all the woke coffee companies did? Canceled their coffee contracts from him. And, we reached out to him instantly. We're like, hey, listen, bro, I'll double down. I'll double down. Like, I love what you got going on. I'm going to double down. So I don't know if I can make up for all their contracts, but shit, I'm going to try. So, we're doing a story on that guy, but it's just like, here's a Black American that immigrated from Ethiopia saying that he loves the country and he loves all the opportunities that the country has afforded him. He's built a very successful business. And you have white coffee company owners like La Colombe or La Colombe that are canceling contracts because this guy loves America. I'm like, if you don't love America, I would really fucking appreciate it if you would just get the fuck out. Just get the fuck out, man.
Go home to mommy.
Yeah. Like, if you think it's going to be better in Canada, man, I would highly just recommend you roll out. Like, take your business and go somewhere else.
You want communism? Go to China.
Yeah.
I have plenty of it for you over there.
Yeah, the NBA should actually pick up and move to China, because evidently they answer to the Chinese government.
They would never dare to kneel during the Chinese national anthem. Never dare. Never dare. By the way, this is my favorite shirt.
I know, I see you wear it everywhere. I love it.
I have two of them because it gets dirty. You got to put in the laundry. I want to see. I want to test your gun knowledge. You talk about giving gifts to your employees. I just got one the other day. You got to see this thing.
Okay.
All right. So I bet you'll know who this is, but I got to show them a little love. But this is my absolute favorite new toy.
Oh, man. Man, I would hate to say it. Is it, fuck, I don't know. I don't know who it is. Who is it? Who makes it?
F1.
F1? Where are they out of? Florida?
I actually don't know. No. I talked with one of my Green Beret buddies. He said that you guys will use their, what's it called, muzzle brake?
Yeah, that's a brake. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that you'll kind of use in the service.
Beautiful. That's badass. That's awesome.
So
pretty
you'll
epic.
be seeing this soon as Joe Biden starts to demonize AR-15s. Oh, I got them banned for 10 years when I was a senator, and I'll do it again. Yeah, let's see what happens, Joe.
Right. And while you were working for the credit card companies and Big Pharma and everybody else, like, wow.
Such a joke. Such a joke.
I look at this stuff and it blows me away that in a country of 300 plus million people with all of the wonderful and diverse population that we have, because I really truly to my core believe this country, and when I say it is the best country in the world, and I've been to a few of these around in my adult life. But Joe Biden is the best that the DNC's got. This is like, he won't come out of his basement. He's a babbling idiot, and I'm so embarrassed for the party that. And they could probably say the same thing about Trump, right? They're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed for the party. But I'm like, bro, that guy is a fucking moron. Like, he was a laughing stock even within the administration, the Obama administration when he was there.
A laughing stock pre-dementia.
Yeah. Pre-dementia. He's like a gaff machine, but
it's almost like, I don't know if it's sad or pathetic or evil, but to put this guy, I take away his political status. Yeah. Could he get hired to work at McDonald's? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think he could actually do any job there. And, day to day, Monday through Friday. This guy is an absolute mess. I have to think there's some nefarious reason why they're propping him up. I think it's one of two things. One, he's a controlled puppet,
right?
And he'll just do what his base wants him to do. And his base is absolutely just radical left, communist, defund the police, Green New Deal, AOC. Ilhan Omar comes from Somalia and bashes our country, gets elected to Congress after being a Somalian refugee, and says America is racist and oppressive and there's no room for opportunity. Are you kidding me? Right. AOC, bartender, one of the dumbest women I've ever seen on TV. Literally went from making margaritas to controlling, national economic policy. America's racist and oppressive. Come on. Like, you guys can't be the ones that say that. You are exactly the living proof of the American dream. I almost think we need a little less of the American dream so that type of stuff can't happen. But that's the beauty of this country, is that even idiots and hateful communists can rise up and get elected. So Joe Biden. Oh, the second reason is I think they might be switching him out. This is a theory I've heard. Now he's not going to the convention.
Right.
He's not going to his own convention because of coronavirus.
So where? Okay, if they're going to switch him out, how would that happen, and who would it be?
I don't know what they're thinking. I've heard Kamala. I've heard Michelle Obama. This is all like some crazy, last-ditch effort master plan that I don't fully know what's going on in their heads. But, he also told us, what's the date today? The 6th? He said, I would announce my vice president first week of August. You got one more day, buddy.
Yeah.
So who's it going to be?
And I think I thought it was strange that he came out and said, I'm going to announce, and it will be a female, and I'm
black female,
and I'm like, okay, so you're only looking at race and gender. Last time I checked, when you're applying for positions, shouldn't you be looking at the most qualified applicant, right? It's not just about whether or not you have the appropriate sex organ and the appropriate skin color, because that's absolute discrimination. And when we look at that, I'm like, man, you're really putting yourself into a corner with that selection. It seems a little bit odd. Now, I get that exactly what that was, because he's trying to galvanize a certain section of the voting base and blah, blah, blah. I mean, but it's just so fucking ridiculous. It's like,
I mean, it's racist. It's racist. You're prioritizing one race above all others, and that's racism by definition. What about Native American women?
Right.
What about
Are they not qualified?
Women? Are they not good enough for you?
Right. I don't think they are.
You know, Hispanic women, not good enough.
Not good enough.
Not good enough for Joe. Yeah. So, you know, they fight racism by using racism, which just makes them confused racists. It's
physics don't change, right? Falling through the sky is generally falling through the sky. However, when you're falling through the sky at night with large pieces of equipment and a number of objects that could potentially inhibit your ability to pull or fly, that makes things far more complicated.
Being able to conduct that military freefall mission is exactly what it was designed for. Getting into a space that was fairly difficult to get into clandestinely was absolutely what military freefall is used for.
It's absurd. But it goes, you know, this is the history of their party. If you're really, you know, paying attention, you know that the person that started the KKK was a Democrat.
Right.
And they were invited to the DNC convention. Jim Crow laws, all Democrat. People that fought against Civil Rights Act, Democrat. I mean, it's Republicans. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Yeah.
Freed the slaves. You know, so the history of the party, all these statues they're tearing down, I'm like, you know, oh, they're these, you know, Civil War Confederate. I'm like, they were all Democrats. You guys are just tearing down your own statues. So the way that they have evolved, it's not like they suddenly got not racist.
Right.
They camouflaged it better.
What?
Their racist. Defund the police is just racism. Oh, sorry. That's just one of the worst forms of racism. Planned Parenthood. More black babies are aborted in New York City every year than born.
Well, of course.
How is that not racist that you're pushing that?
Right.
So it is a very evil game Democrats are playing. You know, Joe Biden, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And then today he said, you know, black people generally think this, but Hispanics, they're a lot more diverse.
So Joe said that.
Literally said that today. It's viral everywhere. He's like, there's so much more diversity with the Hispanics. I'm like, wow.
So such an idiot.
How is this guy?
He's not only a gaffe machine, but I mean, and that's a big reason why, of course, he doesn't want to debate. He doesn't want to debate. And I think the biggest reason he doesn't want to debate is I don't think that he can put together a coherent and spirited actual debate. I really don't. I think that he'll get fucking dump trucked and he'll be exposed for essentially being a fraud, because if he thinks that going through the primaries against his own party was bad, oh fuck. Like, look out, man. Like, it's not even going to be comparable to the type of just absolute menagerie of fucking verbal violence that would be committed, and he won't be able to stand in that ring. He can't. He
It'll be
can't.
a 10-point swing.
Yeah.
Whatever the polls are at the day before,
doesn't matter.
Swing.
He'll be a gaffe machine.
Trump smoked Hillary.
Yeah.
And you know, say what you will about her, relatively smart lady.
No, she's a sociopath, I would imagine.
100%.
And she's a very intelligent sociopath that didn't get into a position of power because she was a fucking idiot, right? I think she was one of probably the smartest people in the room a lot. And I'm not saying that even to her credibility, because I think she looks at people like individual and thinks of people the same way that we think of the individual grains of sand in the sidewalk that we're walking on. They mean fucking less than nothing. They are nothing to her. They are a means in order for her to get to where she needs to go. That's exactly what I think of that woman. Like, I have zero fucking love for that woman. And
like who stays with a husband that we now find out flew on Epstein's jet 24 times, and now we got testimony, young girl. I mean, who stays with that person unless you're a sociopath, power hungry, you know?
And that just exemplifies exactly what's wrong with the media, that a former president of the United States was not only a close and personal friend with Epstein, flew on his jet multiple times, like you said, 24 plus times, was close and personal friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, and then has eyewitness testimony putting him on the fucking island that's known as Pedo Island. And how much coverage did that get? Fucking zero.
You know what did get coverage? Social media.
Right.
You know what Facebook just banned? The hashtag Save the Children.
What?
Literally. Hashtag Save the Children was at least temporarily banned. I think it's still fully banned because posts under that hashtag violated community guidelines. Save the children. Our earlier conversation, why are they doing this to stop, Trump, the pandemic, the economy? I'm going to go ahead and add that there's a lot of child sex trafficking that is being exposed that is connected to a lot of very senior people inside and outside our government that they don't want taken down. This is their last ditch effort. Trump, I will say, to his credit, has been cleaning out the FBI, the DOJ, the ones that, spied on him, by the way. Still haven't had that addressed, hopefully soon. He's got a lot of judges appointed. And I think they know that when he is reelected, the hammer is going to really start to come down because he's set up all these dominoes.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they start coming down even more before the election. But a lot of big names on that list. And he's been talking about Bill Clinton and Epstein Island since like 2015, publicly. On camera. So he's out for him. Trump is a very aggressive counterpuncher. And I think he's going to have the last laugh.
Well, and it's interesting for me because I think about this, quite a bit. I mean, politics is a hobby of mine. It's not really anything that I would say that I'm well read in. But, you think about some of the things that Alex Jones was talking about a few years ago, and I typically don't elevate Alex outside of I think he's really entertaining. I think that a lot of what he's talking about is fucking super out there, and I just can't get on it. But man, when he was talking about this stuff several years ago, everybody called him a fucking kook and a crazy, and there's no way, and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, you just have to kind of look into this a little bit and just read a little bit on Pizzagate. And I'm not saying that's an official stream of coherent information, but there are some very significant and powerful people that have been rolled up for diddling kids. So it's not a stretch to think that, where there's smoke, there's fire, and that there's a lot of these people that, from my perspective, I was talking about this at an earlier show, which is honeypotting is a real thing. And in the intelligence community, when you're being honeypotted, it's typically going to be to get some type of information against you for infidelity. Back in the day, infidelity was the thing. So a foreign intelligence agency could use you as a pawn and essentially blackmail you for not only information, but also co-opt you for your individual power, right? And but infidelity in marriage is not seen as a really bad thing anymore. So I look at this and I think Epstein could have been a puppet for a large scale international and domestic pedo honeypot operation that was built in order to collect, manipulate individual, either corporate executives or individuals that had very powerful and influential positions within government. And I don't think that that's a stretch for me to even say that. Why would your fucking house be wired for video and sound everywhere? Why would you have so many different people that are connected? So many, where did your money come from? And I'm looking at this saying it's going to take a decade plus of forensic auditing from a very specialized section of the FBI to even try to unravel all of this. And oh, by the way, if you can do it in time before all these fucking people are offed, by the way, nobody talked about the judge's family getting fucking smoked by the guy that was dressed up as a FedEx guy, right? Where was that on the news? Why is the Deutsche Bank guy that hung himself the same morning, why is that not on the news? Where is this information? Where is journalism in America? Where is it?
It's hiding because they're either working for these people or they don't want to be FedExed, you know. And I hate that company's even being demonized because FedEx is a great company, and the owner Fred Smith is a great guy. Yeah. Oh, I can't tell you. I mean, we get Amazon, Uber Eats at my place, and I post some incendiary stuff. I don't think I'm necessarily high on the list of whacks, but I don't think it's impossible I'm not on one somewhere. And anytime someone comes to the door now, I'm like, I'm not answering. Like, leave the package and go, buddy. Like, sorry.
I got to ask you about this. The Nadler video that you did a while back.
Nadler, yeah.
Nadler, yeah.
So going back to the doctor stuff, it was myself and a few other people, right? We had been in touch with the doctors. They invited us to go film it. It was literally like 5 of us filming them. That was it.
Right.
And that was a 2-day trip. And we were going to kind of scout out the area, like areas to shoot and whatever, just kind of give advice. And so we, flew into DC, and we're taking we checked into our hotel. We're taking an Uber. DC is a ghost town right now. I don't know if you've been there recently, but everyone's walking around masked. There's barely anyone walking around. And so we're taking the Uber, and we're driving by Congress, and literally one person on this whole, I think it was Constitution Avenue or whatever, one person sitting outside. It was Nadler and like his like little staffer friend. And we're driving by, and Fleckus goes, "Wait, was that Jerry Nadler?" I go, "Yeah, I think it was." And then we tell our Uber driver, like, "Hey, can you just pull over real quick? I think we gotta, it's game time for some. We gotta figure out something to do with this guy."
Yeah.
So we get out of the car. It's me, my Fleckus, and her name is Midge. She runs an account called Fog City Midge, great account. And we're like, all right, we got to do something. And I'm like, all right, well, I didn't see him with a mask. I hate masks. So I want to hit him on the mask thing. If we can just get a group picture of him not wearing a mask and like, boom, that's all I want. And Fleckus is like, I want to get him for, or just ask him about Antifa violence, right? Like, this was kind of when it was peaking and the officers are, pulling people in vans. Love that, by the way.
Love it. Yeah, I love it.
Absolutely love that. So let's just, get his opinion, see what he says. So we go over there and then we walk, and then we walk past them and then stop and we pretended. We're like, what is that? Jerry Nadler? Wow. We just got to DC and we see a real celebrity, like total just country bumpkin, naive.
Fuck yeah.
And he's like, and we're like, can we get a picture? And he's like, yeah, of course. And I'm not wearing like a shirt like this. I'm wearing a discreet shirt. Granted, I don't think I look like a typical liberal, but maybe. And he's like, yeah, get in the picture. And so we're getting in the picture, and I see him, and he doesn't like, oh, well, let me put on my mask for the picture. He doesn't. I'm like, yes. Boom, we got him. Get the picture. Bam. And then Fleckus is like, oh, I'd love to get just one, me and you. And he's like, yeah, sure. And so our friend holds the camera to take a picture, but she's actually videoing.
Right.
And so he's like, and then my buddy's like, oh, so what do you think about the violence going on in New York City? And he kind of gets in a conversation. And he's like, what about Antifa violence in Portland. And at that point, his younger
handler
guy started kind of like nudging him, like, hey, this is a hit job. You're getting smoked right now, buddy. Like, you have no idea. He's like, well, that's a myth in DC, da-da-da. And then his piece of shit Uber pulls up some, Prius, the Humpty Dumpty mobile, and he waddles over there. I don't know how he functions as a human.
I don't either.
It's anatomically impossible for a human to look like that. I don't even get it. It's like a circle on two stilts hidden in his pants. And calls it a myth. And, we're just very polite. Oh, Mr. Nadler, there's a lot of violence. And that went viral. We posted it 10 minutes later. It went viral. 4 million views in an hour. They were talking, President Trump's talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. It was on Tucker Carlson even 2 nights ago. They're still talking about it. And from the heavens, Attorney General Barr had a hearing the next day.
Oh, yeah.
And Nadler is the guy that's supposed to grill him on the use of federal troops, agents in Portland to quell this leftist insurrection. And so you got a guy up there that yesterday just went viral saying Antifa is a myth.
Right.
His credibility is shot.
Yeah.
Shot. We have there's so much footage. Everyone sees it. And he's, trying to grow Barr. So the fact that he was the only person we saw on that street and that he said such a stupid thing, we're like, this is divine intervention. I mean, whatever. I think God wanted this to happen because there's no other reason. And then the next day, hydroxychloroquine, 18 million views, or I said the naughty word, 18 million views, in 6 to 8 hours. So that was honestly probably the best 2 days we've had in terms of absolutely just manhandling the political narrative for a couple of days. And just with a cell phone. So kind of just goes to show you, to the people watching, if you think you can't do anything, you absolutely can. If you troll these people politely and intelligently, and especially if someone like me sees that video or someone else with a platform, boom, we will absolutely accelerate that, get that going viral. That stuff is viral all day. The guy that confronted Joe Biden up in about the AR-15, some worker, and Joe Biden's like, I don't work for you. He's like, oh, actually you do, sir.
Right.
And you should not be coming after our AR-15s. Viral. The guy was a hero. NRA put him up on everything, So anyone can do this stuff. Anyone can do this stuff. And I hope you do.
Well, I think that's the premise of this, which is I think people should always be in fear of capitulating more of their individual freedom, rights, or liberty to a bunch of fucking half-wits that typically have their own, if not, ego-driven agenda, or they're being manipulated directly by somebody else for their agenda, right? So when I talk about these things, it's like, less government is a good thing, right? In a way that I think is the government should intercede when people are being hurt by other people, right? And when we say physical violence, I don't think it's ever a direct and primary course of action. And it's the whole thing, like our right to protest, our right to free speech. Like these are things like we can press mute, you can change the channel, you can turn on Netflix, whatever the fuck it is. You can just not use Facebook. But if we don't at least take a proactive stance on protecting our individual rights, and we have to not only protect those, we have to covet those. And we can't capitulate or give ground to anyone, either party, that wishes to encroach on those things, either party. And that's where I'm like, I'm always very skeptical of any individual politician that thinks it's right to take, right? Take that whole thing of like, I'm going to take, or I'm going to, supersede authority. Like, well, those are dangerous things, man. And when we talk, our individual conversations about, whether it's the environment, because I look at the environment and this is where I sometimes disagree with conservatives because I agree with public lands and, some of the things that the EPA actually does for what we as a collective whole in community. I agree with these things, right? And so we've had this long and complex conversation about individual and public lands and how, for instance, would be, I'm one of the only companies or coffee roasters in Salt Lake that's putting in an after roaster to burn off all my excess smoke because we live in a valley, right? So there's ethical right. And, sometimes the government does some pretty good things and protective measures for us. Now, the post 9/11 fucking data land grab that the government had as far as our individual rights and their ability to fucking look into what we're doing on our computers and cell phones, that was never given back by Obama, right? It was never given back. So when we forfeit those, they're fucking typically gone forever, right? They're gone. And
yeah, I think if there, there's one piece of advice that I would give that kind of attaches onto that is we have to get more upset.
Yeah.
In public ways.
Right.
Because a lot of the people that are taking our rights are just nerds.
Right.
And they're control freaks and they're losers. Like Dr. Fauci throwing a baseball. I cannot respect any man that throws a ball like that. I don't care how old you are. There's videos of Trump throwing a ball. He's whizzing it in there.
Right.
Hitting the glove. And you got Fauci who threw it halfway between home plate and first base. Are you out of your mind? I don't care how many degrees you got. I'm not going to respect you as a human being, frankly. So we got to stop being intimidated by these people, A. And B, you have the ability, every single one of you watching has the ability to transform this country instantly. And that is going to political events, going to rallies, and standing up for what you believe in a respectful, intelligent way. Prepare your thoughts, prepare what you're going to say, get it on camera. And it is a digital insurgency of sorts. Right. General Flynn, who you talked about, calls us digital soldiers. And I do not like to use that term because I reserve that term for the actual soldiers. But he's making a point that the internet is our asymmetrical information warfare zone.
Right.
How do we circumvent? How do we get around social media censorship, fake news narratives? We confront these people.
Right.
We confront these tyrants, and we respectfully, and sometimes not respectfully, depending on the person or the situation, address where they have overreached, where they've overstepped their bounds. And we put it on the internet, and we let the internet do the rest. And that stuff has seismic effects on the trajectory of this country. Let the Jerry Nadler situation be proof of that. That interaction took a minute and a half total.
Right.
And it directly affected almost an entire week's worth of news in some way, shape, or form. The Antifa violence, Tucker Carlson, the Attorney General Barr hearings, minute and a half of me driving by in an Uber, us driving by in an Uber, team effort.
Right.
So let that be the example of what anyone can do. Anyone.
Well, one of the things that we're doing here recently is we identified, and I sent the story to you about a former Force Recon Marine that got he was arrested up in Wyoming, and he's been serving time for murder. And we did a very comprehensive story on it on Coffee or Die. I think the guy has been unjustly sentenced to a very long sentence. 50. He's looking at 50 years after he's already served 5. The circumstances around it, if you go and read the story of Coffee or Die, just please go out and read it. Did you have a chance to take a look at that? Did you read that?
Oh yeah, I read it top to bottom.
And I'd be interested to kind of hear, your take from, your previous background as far as, what your interpretation of those events, like what's happening in the justice system where, because this seems to me like there's at least enough evidence that can you change the course of action in this? Like how do people look at the justice system like this and say, I don't know, I don't know how to change this, right? I don't know even how to like bring this to light and even what's beneficial to a person in his situation.
Well, I think one of the things that everyone can do is contribute to his legal fund.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a good lawyer that is going to get him out of this. I think there was a little bit of the lawyer that he used was very good, but he was not from Wyoming.
Right.
And relationships are extremely important. The court systems in general are extremely important in terms of like give and take.
Right.
And when you got Wyoming people, looking at a kind of fancy, even though he's a military lawyer, I believe, kind of fancy,
former military guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Southern California attorney. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Wyoming. It's like going back in time in a lot of areas.
Right.
And I thought that the lawyer that, practicing law is kind of like practicing medicine. There's not necessarily one way. That was one of the most frustrating parts of law school is that there's no one answer.
Right.
It's how best can you argue something that can kind of go both ways.
Right.
So there were some strategic decisions that I didn't necessarily agree with.
Right.
And a lot of it came down to it's not necessarily what you say, it's also what you don't say. A lot of it came down to the jury instructions. And it came down to, with for second degree murder. So do I think if he had only been hit with manslaughter, I don't think this causes a huge stir.
Right.
Second degree murder is not right. I think that's an injustice, especially with the penalties it brings. And the very definition. And you had a jury foreman that had the connections with the prosecutor.
Right.
And the jury foreman is a defense attorney.
Right.
So kind of going back to, your strategic lawyer decisions, why would you ever let a defense attorney be your jury foreman?
I didn't understand that. That's why I was going to ask you. I'm like, why would that guy make that decision? That doesn't make sense to me. Was that just a bad decision?
I went to law school and, no offense, people that want to be defense attorneys were the people I disliked the most. And it's not that they were bad people per se, but their values, I just didn't like them. There's just Hillary Clinton laughs about getting that child rapist off when she was in the 70s. That's defense attorneys like that they get they're almost like narcissistic in a way that they got the bad guy off because they're anti-cop a lot of the times. They're anti-system. They're and it's like, no, but you're actually just getting really, really bad people off, or you'll take blood money.
Right.
Because that's where you make the money in criminal law is, OJ defense attorneys.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So, anyway, so that defense attorney being on the jury was awful. And there's a personal connection.
Yeah.
But it came down, in my opinion, to the jury instruction. And they said that for it to qualify as second-degree manslaughter, they had to be reckless in their use of force. That would cause substantial bodily harm. And for some reason, and self-defense is a defense to that.
Right.
Right. For some reason, that was not soundly pushed on the jury. So a couple things. One, the bullet trajectory, everyone agrees, when, you know, kind of the guy seemed to be bent over.
Right.
Right. So how is that reckless? That guy was clearly either reaching in the vehicle, potentially for his gun.
Right.
Or was trying to breach the window at the time, right? It's a little undecided whether the bullet broke the glass or the guy broke the glass. Both of which, and the Marine, I think he's about what, 5'6", 5'7"?
Yeah.
And the guy he shot's like 6'3", 220 with like a chin strap.
Mm-hmm.
That alone, 2 a.m, drunk. How is that reckless? It's Wyoming. You're not shooting into a neighborhood.
Right.
You're shooting at someone bent over at your window. Your car is like a home.
Yeah.
Someone's breaking into your car unprompted. There's no dispute as to whether, you know, they were fighting in the parking lot and they ran his car. There's nothing. He was in his car by himself. He was sleeping.
Yeah.
I was probably trying to break into the guy. If I had to guess, because I was a little confused, like, why would he try and break into the car? And I guess it was because he thought that was his ride, right? They're both probably, you know, messed up at that point.
Right.
But like, he probably thought, and he has a huge record, like tons of burglaries and all that stuff. Probably thought someone was trying to drunkenly take his brother's car.
Yeah.
That's my best guess.
Yeah.
If I'm a chin strap guy with 19 felonies dropped or whatever, you know, and I'm drunk and I see a car covered in snow, hey, get out of my car. That's my brother's car.
Right.
Screw you. 6'3" to break a window? Not going to take that much, you know?
No.
So the guy is clearly shooting in some self-defense. And if it's entirely possible he was reaching for his gun. Where was the gun? I don't actually remember reading where it was.
It was, well, when the cops found it, it was in the passenger seat.
But it was on the seat, right?
Yeah.
But like at the time of the struggle,
I don't know.
Where was the gun? Did the guy see it? He probably had it in his hand, probably saw it, you know. So he's reaching, he's either trying to break through the window or he's already through the window.
Right. And
worst case scenario, he's reaching for the gun. All three of those scenarios, in my opinion, this just happened in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
The guy that shot the kid with the AK.
Yeah.
Through the window.
Right.
You know, pointed at him. Now, this guy in Wyoming didn't necessarily have a gun.
Right.
But again, 5'6" versus 6'3". I don't care if you're a Marine or a Green Beret. Like that's a pretty big disadvantage right off the bat. And then, so self-defense. You know, it wasn't, you know, the best move that he drove away after. But again, woke up from, and he's got trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, and what was the other thing? Oh, he's a combat veteran. He should have known that X, Y, Z. I'm like, no, that's actually like the opposite.
Right.
The fact that he's a combat veteran almost certainly has triggers that you cannot understand. That when someone is putting your life in danger and coming in your vehicle, like that based on my, you know, my brother fought in Iraq and I dealt with stuff, you know, other people I know, you know, one of my friends had his daughter had balloons for the birthday. He's like, all right, now we were driving the car and he's done, you know, 15 tours. He was he's like, now don't pop balloons near daddy. You know, like it's not, oh, you're a combat veteran, so you're hardened to all of life. It has effects that are very complex. And to discount that, like that lawyer, especially the military lawyer, should have explained, no, it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
If you're banging on a window at 2 a.m. after you just woke him up, after he's been, you know, taking, you know, drinking, doing whatever we all do any weekend.
Right.
Yeah. And honestly, if someone's breaking in your damn car, 6'3" dude, clearly messed up, that's a damn good reason to shoot someone. I'm not, you know, depending on the circumstances. So at the very worst, manslaughter, second degree decades, and absolutely not. Neither of them probably even fully remember what happened that night. And to his credit, he said once the cop pulled him over, I have glass all over me because he broke the.
Yeah.
So he clearly wasn't that messed up. Like, for someone to say that, I mean, that's a very good argument. And there's a lot of, data. When you shoot, it has the big shards.
Right.
When you break, it has the little pieces, and there was a lot of little pieces. Mm-hmm. So evidence is in his favor that the guy broke through the window. The guy has 19 burglaries, which I know wasn't allowed in court. I think it's an absolute travesty of justice. And what specific things we can do at this point, I would need to personally do more research. Mm-hmm. But I am glad that's getting public attention, because that typically, I'm really hoping there's, the Innocence Project, right? They have these lawyers that will take on these cases and, appeal. And I think there's absolutely opportunity, especially when it comes to the jury instruction.
Right.
A lot of appeals are not, you cannot argue the facts, but you can argue the procedures were incorrectly applied. And I think in terms of jury instruction, there may be some issues there on appeal. It's crazy to me that they thought that was reckless for him to shoot a guy that was clear, and the bullet evidence shows it was, he's bent over. So that's my general opinion.
I was talking about this yesterday with Mike Clancy. He actually served with him. He works here at Black Rifle. And, part of this, I think we have to assume responsibility as a society, which is, you've got guys that have been integrated back into normal life, right? That have spent decades now in war. And a lot of these guys, when we were in Iraq, it was, Fallujah, Ramadi, Mosul, Basra, Baghdad. Like, these cities were not, it wasn't a fucking day ride, man. It wasn't like you weren't engaged in combat, especially if you're a Marine, and especially if you're a force recon Marine. And there's a very distinct and big difference. And I think we're doing ourselves a injustice as a nation not to have some type of catcher's mitt for guys in these situations, because you can't teach people to kill and to take life and then encourage them to take life in these scenarios for decades and then expect them to fully integrate back into society and not have a certain percentage. These guys that are broken, because their switch might be broken, right? But that's the responsibility of the country. It's the responsibility of the country's post-healthcare system, where a combat veteran that kills somebody, I think they have to have a different, and I'm not saying there needs to be two different justice systems. I'm saying we have to come in as a veteran block, and I would prefer it be in like the veteran mental health side of things, that starts to understand what's happening so we can catch these guys and figure out what's going on in their brains so we can fix it and make sure that it doesn't happen again. A few years ago, I was talking to the USASOC, one of the head United States Army Special Operations Command, USASOC lead psychologists, and he was telling me, because I was talking to him about a book called On Killing by Grossman. He was talking about, human behaviors and psychology on, whether or not you could adapt to killing and how easy it was. And his theory was that people didn't want to kill people. That's his whole theory, which it's been debunked. But the USASOC guy, and I was like, hey, have you read this? And he's like, yeah, man, I've read it. He said, but Evan, you don't quite get it. He's like, it's not turning the switch on that we worry about. It's turning the switch off that we worry about. And it rung like a fucking bell in me, where I was like, man, you are teaching people to take life, sometimes on a daily, multiple times a day basis. year after year, and then compound that with the loss of their friends and their loved ones, and then compound that with multiple rotations in different areas with, you know, a lack of sleep, poor diet, and all these other fucking really stressful things that we're going to put our bodies through. And then you expect these guys to come back into society, get out, and not have any issues. And I'm like, no, man, that's not going to happen. That's an unrealistic ask for you to send men and women to war, teach them how to take human life and deal with that, and then expect them not to have a few of their switches fucking broken in the future. And then if it does break, to go, fuck it, we're sending them to jail. That's like the worst possible way. It's not as if they have exemplified habitual criminal behavior. I don't think he has a record at all. And I've known a few guys that, man, you break. Like there's guys, I know a few of them that they turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, they turn to suicide. Well, to me, it's not only an injustice to the legal system itself, because I really do think that the guy got fucked, but it's also, as a society, we can't expect people to go off and fight in these wars and not fully integrate them back. And that's not an excuse to kill people. I'm not trying to say this is an excuse. I'm just saying there has to be a better catcher's mitt, or we won't be able to solve this problem in the future. But you can't have those two things. You can't ask people to go to war and not integrate and make sure that we don't fucking catch the issues when they come back broken.
And that's assuming they have no form of TBI.
Right.
And that they weren't blown up. Because,
right,
you know, especially with what we're seeing in the NFL with CTE, right?
Yeah.
We're learning a lot more. There's stuff you cannot see on an MRI, on an X-ray, nothing. There's damage to your brain that, you know, over time, you know, calcifies, or and not to mention the brain is just extremely complex. And, you know, I mean, what are the long-term effects of when you get blown up but you live?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're talking about this earlier with the burn pits and stuff. I mean, there's so much of all these, you know, IEDs and the trauma. You know, my brother, again, he was, you know, fought in Iraq, and he got blown up at least once in his it was an MRAP, and he said it's just like this pressure on your whole body, your head. It feels like it squeezes you the hardest you've ever been squeezed, and then it lets go, and you're just like, what the hell? You know, and that has an effect. So going back to your theory, this actually has changed my life, because I've never thought of that. And you're absolutely right. And there already is a legal framework for something like this. Not for the military, though.
Right.
It's called battered women syndrome. And there's no correlation between battered women and, you know, our military, you know, combat veterans. But what happened in our justice system is these women were in these very abusive relationships, and they would ultimately kill their husbands.
Right.
And they would kill them like in their sleep, or they would poison them. And they would get these extremely long sentences as like, oh, you psycho, you killed your own husband in his sleep. And they were like, he consumed my life with abuse, physical, emotional, verbal, everything, abuse. And it was my only escape. And ultimately, the legal system started recognizing that. It's called battered women syndrome. And again, it's not an excuse to kill, but it's a mitigating factor. Right. It reduces the time served. It reduces possibly the charges, stuff like that. I think we absolutely do need to have a analogous type of mitigating factor of like combat veteran trauma, something mitigation where, yeah, we as a society take these kids.
They're kids. Their brains aren't even fully developed.
We all know your brain's not fully developed at this point until you're like 24. We take them during their most formative adult years, and we turn them into the best killers on planet Earth. And then we stick them through all the stuff you and, all your colleagues have been through, years of war and stress and loss and hardship. And then they come back and they say, all right, go, figure it out in society. And then, throw in a little alcohol. We got a suicide problem for a reason.
Right.
But you throw in some alcohol or, weed, and you wake some guy up and you're banging on his window and you're attacking him. I'm like, who in their right mind wouldn't do what he did?
Well, and I looked at it too, man, and I was like, you've consumed some alcohol, so years of this iterative process of reacting to contact. It's a real thing. You become what's called in psychology terms unconsciously competent at a form of reaction based on the scenario. So you've rehearsed these drills so many times that they become not something that you have to actually think about anymore. Your body just continues to react because what happens with what's called your OODA loop, your observe, orient, and decide, act. And in a professional football player analogy is the best thing that I can put out, which is if the professional football player was trying to think about how he was placing his, the quarterback was trying to think about how he's placing his individual fingers on the football, and then position his arm in order to throw at a specific angle so he could hit a wide receiver. And if he had to think about all those individual aspects of what he was trying to accomplish, there's no way that he would be successful. Zero. So you have to put those things on auto drive. You have to put all those reactionary mechanisms on auto drive, and you build it in through repetition, and then you galvanize it with experience. War. Right? Then you fucking galvanize that, right? And so for me, when I'm looking at the defense of this and I'm going, man, I know exactly why that guy drove off. I know exactly why he reacted the way he did. Because you're sleeping, boom, boom, psh. He does a reaction drill the best that he can, but he's trained over years of his life that this is the way I survive. I have to eliminate threat in order to survive. There's zero question in my mind. I know what happened. Eliminate the threat, and then you break contact. You don't stay around. You don't stay around for the additional gunfight or the follow-on explosion or the additional RPG. You don't stay. I know why he drove away. You eliminate the threat and you get off the X. That's what you do. And so I'm thinking about this and I'm like, holy shit, man, I can see exactly what happened and what was going through this guy's mind. This guy got startled and woken up out of his sleep. He eliminated the threat and he drove away. He did exactly what he was trained to do. He did exactly what he not only was trained to do, but experience that is so embedded into his individual biology and the way that his fucking brain is wired. That's the only way his body knows how to survive. He was on auto drive. I'm going, he's going to get 50 years, possibly he's going to get 50 years for an auto drive mechanism that was put in there by the United States government, by us. We put that shit in there to teach him how to survive and kill appropriately. We put it in there. It's our responsibility. It's our collective responsibility to make sure, like, hey, man, this auto drive shit we can't press the button on this auto drive because it's going to fucking backfire and we might kill. You got very capable and dangerous people that are roaming around living fucking normal lives and dealing with, day to day, and they're adjusting, but there's always going to be the statistics of there are going to be a certain percentage of these guys that find themselves in these situations where it just goes wrong. And to me, it's a failure, I think, not only of the court system, but it's a failure as a society to even recognize that this is fucking wrong. We did this. We taught this guy how to survive. He came home. He used this training in a survival situation, and then he was punished.
Oh, it's absurd. Because again, if we take his story for truth, the guy was reaching in there to grab a gun. And
Correct.
based on the history, you know, court has to follow certain rules. People don't. And I can look at that guy's history. I can look at just how he looks and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I know that type of guy.
Yeah.
I've interacted with him. And they don't play by the rules usually.
Right.
Clearly, he's demonstrated that.
Right.
So, you know, and it's unfortunate someone lost their life. But if I'm in a deep red state and I'm banging on someone's window, especially a guy, and he probably had prior knowledge that guy was in the service.
Probably.
Because they smoked weed earlier that night. They hung out. Where you from? Oh, I'm a Marine. You know, like probably came up. You know, so he had some prior knowledge, and it's you're right. I mean, I could see a very minor sentence, but this is something that I talked with JT, and now I've talked with you, and I've done my research on it, and it's something that I will 100% support. In a public way, that there needs to be a second opinion of sorts on this, and that this guy deserves at least a better lawyer, and a strong appeal before because it just 50 years for what is largely a self-defense scenario. 50 years, people get off in 25 years for first-degree murder.
Right. Yeah.
They wait outside for someone they did a bad business deal with, and they pop them. They get like 25 plus years. This guy sleeping in his car wakes up. He wasn't doing anything to anybody. And then so 50 years is absurd. It's absurd.
50 years. And we were talking about it the other day. We were saying, 50 years, man. And,
that's a life sentence.
It's a life sentence. The guy's, 30 plus, he's 36 or something like that. Like he's going to die in prison because, and this other guy that was obviously, in my mind, obviously at fault. I don't think he was checking on him, right? Like, he's all of a sudden a good Samaritan. Okay. Yeah. After a life of just being a piece of shit, he's all of a sudden a fucking good Samaritan.
Yeah. He's an angel boy.
Yeah. He's an angel. And so if you guys haven't read the story, it's on coffeeordie.com. I'll post a link to it in this podcast, and go over and the thing of it is, what we're doing and what I've committed to is we're paying travel expenses for former Marines to go up to Wyoming to make sure that we show up and make a good standing for not only the veteran community, but at least go to bat for, one of our brothers that I think has been unjustly sentenced. And I think, if you're interested in supporting, there's a GoFundMe page. There's also a bunch of other pages where you can look through the evidence yourself. Third party forensics were done. Like this is, for me, it's not necessarily, I'm not an attorney. I don't have access to every document, but I really do look at this. I think this guy got fucked, and I think we owe it to him as a nation to at least go back and, give it another look. And he's got to get a second chance on this one, because I don't know how many times, like I was telling my buddy, I was like, if I stop at a rest stop or something like that, and then I'm traveling, put my gun in my lap, because I don't know what kind of fucking weirdos are going to be at rest stops. I don't know what kind of weird shit that I'm going to encounter. And, it hits pretty close to home, because I could see myself in that situation, like I could not necessarily arguing with my dad or something like that, because I get along with him great, but I could see myself in that situation reacting. And I think there's so many guys like us that can see ourselves in this situation where we react, and it's just not, it just didn't tip in his favor anywhere near. I think it's so one-sided. So please check out the story, check out the pages. And then what else do you want to talk about, man? You want to talk about anything else or plug anything? What do you got going on?
That's it. I mean, people want to check me out, DC Draino, DC _Draino on literally any platform. You'll find me. Instagram, Twitter are my go-tos. You know, it's not for the faint of heart. There's gonna be things you disagree with. I hope to at least make you think. And, you know, I don't block liberals if they follow me at all, because if you're following me, that means it's having some effect on you.
Right.
You cannot deny it. And I've had so many people that said, hey, I used to be a Democrat, I used to be a liberal, and now you've made me, you know, want to be a Trump supporter. So I'm not saying that's common, but it does happen. So yeah, come check it out, and hopefully you know, I can give you some information that will better educate you to you know, debate these important topics for our country. I think it's extremely important that we stand up at this time. So other than that, nothing much. Just hope you know, step up this next 2 or 3 months to help save America, because we have very violent, chaotic socialism banging at the door, and it wants in. So we got to stand up.
Well, I can't agree more. I think, you know, socialism is not only, you know, at our doorstep. I think it's made its way in the fucking house here. And
yeah,
you know,
I'd have to agree with that.
I really highly encourage people to go through and understand the platforms, look at, you know, where our politicians stand, what are they voting on. I've got an app on my phone that pings me every time legislation's passed, and I try to at least read through what's being passed, who's voting on what. You know, I've had Dan Crenshaw on the show a lot. Like, you know, I love freedom, and I don't you know, for me, I don't discriminate. If you're a freedom-loving Democrat, you're probably on my fucking side. You know, if you're a wingnut progressive socialist, buddy, I can say you can feel safe tonight, but hopefully in the future we can kind of galvanize our group and really activate a voting base to really beat this stuff back to where it belongs. It belongs in. I don't think it belongs anywhere in this fucking world. I've never seen it work. I think it's a travesty to see what's happening to America and this ideology and why it's catching fire. I'm blown away by it. But go out, follow DC Draino, check him out, argue with him if you want. But it's a good page. It's super fun and engaging. So thanks, Rogan. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, Evan. Great talking with y'all.